On September 2005, the Venezuelan writer Ercito Garcia already said, based on a publication of the sociologist Hans Dietrich, he already anticipated that the military doctrine of the United States has been readjusted periodically to attain his objectives. One of those was done by Bill Clinton, that was set in the Summit of the Americas in 2004, which presented 4 strategic fronts that were going to be done by 2006. There was to go with the free trade agreement, reconstruction of the political front, appropriation of the Amazon, and this last was done with pressures from the policy of the U.S. in this treaty of the cooperation, the Amazon, this ambition to go after our natural resources. We're going to speak about the Amazon, that is a base of the biosphere that is basic in the world and that is so desired. So this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to start and analyzing this. We'll have more guests, and as always, your critical thinking. The fires that were provoked keep on going on between Brazil and Bolivia that have done away with 2 million of hectares. Many of the dry forests of Paraguay have been slashed. According to the scientists and environmentalists, if this percentage elevates a bit more, they will be irreversible, and we will need more than 300 years to reverse the effects. There are like 80,000 fires in Brazil. Meanwhile, during the first week of September, the Brazilian chancellor visited Washington for 3 consecutive days. He met with Mike Pompeo, and they were close to sign a free trade agreement with the U.S. that was going to be signed and announced soon. Let's hear both their declarations. When President Trump and Bolsonaro met in March of last year, they agreed to establish a bilateral strategic relationship. This is why today we have our first strategic dialogue in 7 years. This changes our relationship and goes beyond a meeting. This is a new era of ties between Brazil and the United States. Brazil, with the leadership of Bolsonaro, has attained a most important role in the commerce. It supports the Middle East, and it's friend of Israel and of the Group of Rio. We will make this relationship grow that already has $100,000 a year. This year, both teams, the Brazilian and the U.S., will fulfill our obligations, and we will have a common fund for the conservation of the biodiversity in the Amazon. This will play a key role in the private sector.
Question sovereignty that would
We have seen questions to Brazil, and that we are not able to confront all of the threats of the environment. Our friends of the U.S. know that that is not true. We are gathering a lot of efforts because we think this is the only way to protect our forests. We need, therefore, productive initiatives to create jobs and income for people in the Amazon. And this is where our association with the United States, it's more important for us. Meanwhile, the indigenous communities that live in the Amazon are ready for the environmental summit that will be carried out in the summit of the United Nations. By request of Antonio Guterres, this will be on the 22nd of this month. Members of the originary peoples are demanding their rights, individual and collective rights, and they say that they are the only guarantees of the balance of nature. That this decision of the environmental summit in New York may incentivize the governments to, first of all, respect the territories, the resources, the rivers, the trees, biodiversity, and the community that there lies. Because at this moment, all of these territories are being killed and they're assassinating the people. And we want to say this here in the Environmental Summit.
Cada dia que passa, a invasão está chegando próximo às nossas aldeias.
Every day that passes, we are close. The invasion is closer to our tribe. We want peace, but we are also ready for whatever comes. We are ready to defend our future. We never wanted this to happen. We don't want this to be solved through bullets. We don't want to be killed with bullets. We need that our governments, both state and federal, do something and assume the responsibility and guarantee our rights to live in our lands. Our right to live without any worries, to live in peace. With the largest river in the world, a source of natural richness where many species coexist. 34 million people live there, and more than 350 indigenous groups also live there. We want to go back to the strategic importance. Amazon. This extensive forest region of 7.5 square kilometers, this is the most important unit of geographic unit. It's the plant heart of America and the rest of the world. It's a hinge between several countries of the continent, some like Brazil, Venezuela, that are mega diverse. It has a very high biodiverse region. It could even be over that of the primary resources like oil and natural gas. It harbors the origin of planet Earth, and it is the map of the intercultural realities of the world. This is valued by imperialistic companies. In this sense, it is a high priority. It is a source of economic traction and sovereignty and comprehensive security affair. Since it's the heart of Latin America, and there have been foreign capitalist interests in its domination. Due to its large amount of resources, it's been a victim of many predatory variables, indiscriminate cutting and burning, mass murders of originary peoples like with fireballs, biopiracy, and circulation of viral diseases, illegal mining, secular problems of poverty, neocolonial territory, inadequacy in communication, and low government presence. In addition, it's been a live border center of the world over water. Let's not forget that the Amazon goes through it, and it represents 20% of the reserves of fresh water. Between 600 and 700 submissions were there that exploited the people, and they recruited the natives there. The United States also attempted to send missions there to make maps and to find the strategic locations. Let's go to our digital websites. Let's go to RT. Million peoples of 56 countries participate in a world protest for the climate. These are manifestations against climate change that are organized right before the climate summit that will take place on September 23rd in New York. This is for Monday. This Friday, there have been million people that have taken to the streets in different cities of the world to demand more actions against climate change. What we have here is just a single picture that RT is showing on their website. We see these people, they are in Berlin,
This has been in several countries, in Munich, South Africa, Bangkok, Paris, Brandenburg, Hamburg, New Delhi, Czech Republic, and many others. Let's go to Telesur. Bolivia will host a summit between the 11th and 12th of October, the summit of the indigenous peoples, to coordinate initiatives to help out with all of the consequences of this fire. This summit will be in Puerto Quijarro, in Santa Cruz, that is bordered with Brazil. They will demand the governors of the people to take concrete actions to save the future of Mother Earth. Let's stop there. But to go a little bit more back in time, January 18, 2018, this is from plan of the United States to make a biological laboratory. According to Rodrigo Bernardo Ortega, he says it's a plan that may have been unheard of. The control of the Amazon is a geopolitical projection of the Pentagon, for which Brazil and Colombia are two key centers. The secret with which these topic is managed show that there is a plan for a Pacific conquest of this territory. One of the military bases is in Caquetá, a border with Brazil. It is one of the main places for freshwater resources, one of the biosphere reserves. And the U.S.'s plan is clear, according to Rodrigo Bernal, is to take the control of this strategic place, using as a pretext the environmental support. What they want to do is to put a flag in the center of the nature, to have the future of the world in their hands. Let's go to a next one. I would like to add Ignacio Lemos from Sao Paulo. Nacho, I would like to hear your opinion and tell us what's going on.
Sobre este punto con el que hoy nos hemos propuesto terminar un seriado dedicado a la Amazonía, la presencia militar estadounidense.
Saludos, Lucía.
Greetings, Lucia. We should have a good idea of all of the interests that are passing through. As you said, now we have this global manifestation to defend Mother Earth and against the climate change that might put at risk the lives of all of the living things on Earth. And on the other hand, on the day-to-day threat to the people who live in the forest. This morning we were covering an action of the women of the people without lands that went to Bayer Monsanto to denounce the advance of the agro-business over on the areas that have protection, and the use of transgenic seeds and toxic material for the land. This affects the land and the consumers. That's how this group has knocked the doors of these multinationals. And at this moment, the U.S. has more than 1,800 lawsuits against these companies. We already have the impact here. Some contradictions that were clear. On one hand are the statements of Jair Bolsonaro speaking of sovereignty when this Amazonic fund was closed, and then he received money from the U.S. based on what Mike Pompeo has just said. In contradiction, there is a story of interests of the U.S. over the Amazon, and a country that is handing in people in places to the U.S.
una instalación de una base militar en un punto estratégico muy cercano a Venezuela, muy cercano al río
So this
Amazonas,
means that they have
muy
a
cercano a
strategic
África,
point.
que también tendrá
The
control
U.S.
sobre el
has a
espacio
strategic
aéreo
point
brasileño.
against the
En ese
neighboring
sentido,
countries.
también
In this
hay que
sense,
remarcar
it's
los
important to
convenios de
highlight
comercio que viene
the
llevando a cabo
commerce
el gobierno brasileño
agreements that the
con sectores aliados
Brazilian
republicanos muy
country, the
cercanos
Brazilian
a Trump
government has
y el
with
gobierno brasileño
sectors
por
that are
parte de la
near Trump.
Cancillería brasileña y también el gobernador del estado de Amazonas,
And
el estado
also
con
the
mayor,
governor of the state of
porcentaje de la
Amazonas.
Amazonia. Justamente Wilson Lima,
His
el,
name is Wilson
gobernador del
Lima.
Partido
He's the
Socialista,
governor of the
social
Socialist
cristiano,
Party
aliado a Jair Bolsonaro,
that is
ha en
allied
los
to
últimos
Jair
días
Bolsonaro.
prestado informaciones a
And
empresas
during the like
estadounidenses
days,
para que lleven a cabo actividades mineras,
they have
agropecuarias y también
been
de
informed that they
extracción de
can
gas en la Amazonia
take out
brasileña.
gas,
Entonces,
oil.
justamente aquellos sectores que dicen que van a apoyar al gobierno de Jair Bolsonaro
So
en la
all
lucha
of these
contra los
sectors that
incendios
say that they're
son
going to
aquellos
support
sectores que
Jair
están
Bolsonaro
interesados en
are
la
the same
explotación
ones that are
de la
interested
Amazonia
in the
brasileña.
exploitation
Nuevamente,
of the
contradicciones
Brazilian
que
Amazon.
muestran
These
la
contradictions
profundización de un modelo
show
de mal desarrollo, un modelo
how
de avance
the model
desmesurado sobre los recursos naturales,
of the south,
en
of the southern
contraposición
economy
con,
has grown.
la defensa de la madre tierra, aquella que defienden los pueblos indígenas, las comunidades tradicionales de aquí en Brasil y las ciudades que también se ven afectadas ya por esta crisis
And this
ambiental.
goes against many countries.
Gracias
Nacho,
por ese
thank you
recuento
very
que nos
much for
hace
your
desde
report
Sao Paulo. Hasta
from
pronto.
Sao Paulo.
Nacho estuvo entre nuestros enviados especiales
Nacho
hacia
was
la zona,
among
así que, bueno,
our
conocemos bien
envoys.
la realidad de la Amazonía brasileña y allí teníamos un resumen como otras
Here we
veces
have a
nos
summary
lo ha
of
ofrecido. Bueno, vamos a
many
profundizar
times he
después
has
de
shown
una
us.
pausa.
Let's
¿De qué
go
forma
to,
se ven expresados o
let's see
materializados
how
esos
it is
intereses
materialized, the
que hacen parte de las
interests
proyecciones
that
de
are
las
part of the
ambiciones
projections
geopolíticas de
of the
Estados Unidos en la
geopolitical
Amazonía,
action
específicamente
in
en
the
lo
Amazon,
referente
in
a
the
lo
Amazon
militar,
on
que
behalf
debemos
of
estar
Trump,
conjugado con otros
especially in
aspectos como el que
the
tratábamos la
military
semana pasada, como
aspect.
el de la biopiratería en pleno. ¿Con cuáles objetivos hace parte de
And
esa
what
lógica
is the
que
part of
tradicionalmente
this,
Estados Unidos con ciertas variantes en
because
las
with
formas, pero sí que no en los
some
objetivos
variables
aplicados durante años,
they have
durante
applied
2
for
siglos o
years,
más
for
en
over
nuestra
200
región.
years.
Bueno, eso lo vamos a revisar junto a nuestros
We're going to
analistas.
check
Como
this
les decía,
along
la
with our
primera pausa
analysts.
es necesaria y ya venimos
It's
con más.
important to set a pause.
Amazonía, apetencias imperiales de
Amazon,
control militar. Esa es
imperialistic
nuestra jugada crítica de hoy.
desire. This is what we're going to be analyzing today.
Repasábamos
In the first part, we went over the strategic parts that show the geopolitical strategic points of this area. That is a hinge to many countries of this continent. Now let's analyze a new aspect. The military interference in the Amazon has among their antecedents the so-called Amazon Long 17. These are military operations that were held in 6 and 7 and 8 of November in the border with Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, just 700 kilometers away from the border with Colombia. Many soldiers participated, and among them there were people from Peru, Colombia, Chile, Panama, and the United States. The justification was the same one that they habitually use: the defense of the biodiversity, the control and monitoring of the migration, humanitarian assistance and peace, and fight against drug trafficking. They mobilized 11 helicopters and almost 2,000 members of the Brazilian military. Amazon Log was also a way for the military suppliers showed all of their capacity to
to many countries. According to reports of the Ministry of Affairs of Brazil, Amazon Loom inspired itself on 2015 that took part in Hungary, and that time many soldiers formed a multinational force that was based in Hungary. Let's also remember that the northern country has 7 military bases all around Colombia, and they share 1,600 kilometers with Brazil. Just as we're speaking about this last part, we're going to join into this one. The military process of the United States in the area is more than a century and a half. The participation of the U.S. military has installed at least 76 military bases throughout the South Command. A group of militaries has gone into rural areas, and they interfere with their normal plans, with 9 bases in Colombia, 8 in Peru, 2 in Paraguay, and 1 under the camouflage in Chile. All of these forces of the United States have surrounded the Amazon. This is a proof of every time more attack on trying to attain the resources. They are trying to look for water, oil, natural gas, and water. None of these elements are going to have to be prevented through a prevention of fighting against drug lords and compensation for human rights. They've been invading. Let's add to our guests from Mexico. We've got Esther Cecilia. She's an international analyst from UNAM, and she's also the leader of a geopolitical chart. Welcome, Esther. And from Sao Paulo, we have another representative. Welcome to our space of Telesur. Let me start with Esther. We are going to one of the antecedents, Esther. It was Tinga in Brazil, Santa Rosa in Colombia. They've got many representatives from these countries, and they speak of this objective of the United States to try to push away a coup on Michelle Bachelet. Well, nothing is coincidental. In fact, this is a plan that has been designed from the beginning of the 21st century. This is from the beginning where they try to go in through the Colombia plan. But let's recover this planet so we, in the midst of so the Amazon zone, it's a very important place for the continental strategy. On one side, for their huge richness, water particularly, it's something impressive. Now that water is going to be one of the central problems and concerns towards the future. But this is not only, it has huge richness, but it also, the strategic location of the Amazon is also important. On one hand, it is the base of satellites that are just on this zone. So this also gives it importance. The fact that many Canal of Panama are passing through. So I really don't know the names exactly, but not only commerce, it's also troops and military equipment that passes through here, and this is totally relevant. There have been a group of exercises that have been carried out here. And because they're calling out openly on Israel to bring equipment, war equipment, in fact, to leave it here in the Latin American countries. These are like two elements that made them very visible. But there's another place. This is we must understand when we're being attacked. For example, Venezuela, it's not only the Amazon basin. This could be thought of a longer term strategy, but particularly this fact of joining positions with Venezuela is something very important to do.
Y el giro gubernamental ha sido clave en esto. Le pregunto a Breno por esa fecha de esa operación.
I would like to ask about this last operation. It was said among the Brazilian militaries that are defensive of the sovereignty and self-determination, to ask the Brazilian to come and to practice with us. This is exactly like training your enemy to fight you.
Hay que llevar en cuenta que hubo en los años un cambio de posición en el comando del ejército brasileño.
It's important to see that there was a training on the military forces. And the idea was that everybody would go back and leave the kids to be at the care of the state. There is an autonomous development of Brazil. If this was joined to one of the two greatest poles of China, Russia, US, the alliance would be with the US. And what does this, we have to think of what does this sovereignty do over our countries. And that's why they're carrying out conjoint exercises. So now the favorite option is this, because Bolsonaro was able to solve a problem and not even move a penny. This is the strategic change of the practices in the past 4 or 5 years. Of course, there is some rejection to this initiative. However, there is a big initiative to help out on sending. The Brazilians are prone to have this type of agreements. It would remove all of the sovereignty the U.S. has. Let me ask you to Esther. I want to know what biopiracy is. And before we were speaking of extractivism and international control.
Y recolonización en una zona en la que analistas como el vicepresidente boliviano Álvaro García Linera consideran ahí.
They consider that there is not enough state presence, and this favors the transnational companies that want to operate there. Yes, of course. There is also the traffic of drugs that goes through there, because this is a region that can cover much of the activities of production of cocaine or other type of drugs. and that has several routes to go through it. So they have to be controlled, I would say, by bands, by criminal groups. The paramilitary that work there in affairs that are more inclined to a political definition in the region are also implicated in the big business of drug trafficking of species and people. Let's not forget that the Amazon basin is the genetic richness. It's not only of mineral and oil and natural gas, no. It is also a source of energy. And all of the activities that have to do with biopiracy of different types can be developed there because the geography contributes. And because finally, according to Garcia Linera, there was never a territorial control of the zone because, as you see now, it's something dry. And it turns out that this forest is what is becoming the most valuable element in the world at this moment. And this is why it starts to be concerning. What I've seen that the Amazon basin from the year 2000, and of course, and also from before, has not only been penetrated by all of these forces, military bases, and institutions of the government, but also it has been surrounded because there are parts where you cannot just play around at any given moment. Other countries that are defending the sovereignty won't allow us. So what do we do in that case? On one hand, you promote all of these irregular groups of mercenaries, etc., to walk the forests, to do the work in a more invisible way. But there is also an express policy to maintain the ring against military bases and a system of regional control that could move by who knows this. Because there are exercises on land, but there are permanent exercises in the rivers and oceans, on land. Some of the South Command that clearly come to do some humanitarian work in Central America. So it's not circumstantial what's going on. For the environmental control, there are key aspects that must be within this agreement. One of them is the Amazon basin. The other one is the pass of the Canada Canal. Then this other part where there are strategic positions. Let's not forget that these positions not necessarily have to be on land. There have been some on the sea. Colombia is a platform that allows them to triangulate everywhere, towards the Caribbean, to the south, to the north. So don't let go of Colombia, but also keep on writing bases of the Caribbean and combining them with all of the people there So this is a region that is really very protected, very insured, very secure, and that it has within them, and what they don't want to hear is Venezuela again, because what they're doing is they're breaking all of the balance in this family.
Sino también hay el problema de la insubordinación, que Venezuela es un punto que impide ese control en los
Venezuela is a point that does not allow the passage of all of these forces. Let's finish with Rodrigo Bernardo, the author whose document 2008 we recommended. The most important thing is that all of the activities are carried out in the presence of governments that do not know anything about sovereignty. In fact, if we consider the new presence of Washington in the north of Brazil, and we add the troops of the Colombian military base, we can say that we are back in the Cold War, because there are even chemical attacks on people. So this is like an absolute power against these regions. Let's bear in mind that these communities have been resisting for several years. I think this is even worse than the Cold War, because in the Cold War, the U.S. did not let their troops do anything. Now, this is not further the case. The United States intervenes directly. This is a totally new approach. And the U.S. Army has pushed this along with the Colombia plan, and now this opens the way to other right-wing governments that there is an integration of the military and the people for combined exercises. This is against the government of Nicolás Maduro. This is a strategy that the government tries to move forward. This is something so new of this line of progress. In terms of geopolitics, the United States tries to put people in the field. They do not delegate local governments. And let me tell you that I have never stopped doing this. And those people tried, and they were coming on behalf of a local program, of a sovereign project. Now what we can see is an open support to the geopolitics of the U.S. Thank you very much, Breno, and to our other gift too. Thank you for the exchange. Let's go to a question that has to do with what we're analyzing today. It's how it works today between Brazil and the United States and their administrations. And you can see how Mike Pompeo and the Brazilian chancellor, this means that they're coming closer to finalize an agreement of free trade. Let's go to our last pause. We'll be right back. Amazon, the desires of the imperialistic powers, and the relationship between the U.S. and Brazil currently also gives us important key details.
the tie between the president of the U.S. and the Brazil is getting closer every time. Both have said that they show that they both hate the good health of Mother Earth, and they also coincide in political beliefs. This has led Bolsonaro to give in some natural resources and natural territories. In the campaign, Bolsonaro was critical of the Paris Accord that set regulations that the governments should comply to. Brazil asked for help to the U.S. for the fires just recently. The Foreign Affairs Chancellor of Brazil said that Bolsonaro and Brazil are both parts of the insurgency against the nonsense. In this framework, they said that globalism is how Marxism is getting into the institutions. Araujo advanced in an agreement with the U.S. after having meetings with Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross. Trump has supported Bolsonaro in the recent dispute with Emmanuel Macron due to the fires. On July 31st, it was in New York that Trump spoke wonders of Bolsonaro, and he said that he wanted to sign as soon as possible an agreement of free trade. He said that he is a great gentleman. He said that he's a Trump of Brazil. This is a great compliment, and he is doing some great work. Now we're back in our studio with Mr. Colmenares. He's an international analyst, wars of the fifth generation. How are you, Simón? Thank you for coming. That we heard, those declarations, those phrases of compliments, what does this tell us? What do you think, where do you think this can lead? What are the objectives? Well, this is like a conflict that comes from ever since 1492 with the kings and the kings of Spain and Portugal, where what they did was they divided the land, they distributed it. Speaking of these two presidents, Bolsonaro and Trump, they have the same psychological profile, and they have the same political beliefs, and they both defend the salvage capitalism. And it's important to see that Bolsonaro has led Brazil to be in depression, and this is why Bolsonaro is president now. This allows us to understand how these two people can get along so well, and they want to just divide the territories. But this was not the main objective. This was not just in fact of deforesting and what they really want is to expand the region where they can extract oil. But what we cannot see goes far beyond. For example, if they extract oil, it's like $59 a barrel. But water, that is so easy to gain, is like $78. So it's much more expensive to export water if we compare with the petroleum of 58. So let's go to the state of the United States. They produce 10 million barrels a day, but they spend 20 So they need to buy the surplus. It's like it's different from Russia that they produce 20 million, but they only use 20% of it. So to dominate this zone, there was a plan called Puebla Panama that has to do how to gain the control. This was the strategic ideological farm. Then we have the South Command. We have in Colombia this base that was in Manta, Ecuador, but when the allied country kicked this base off, and then they went to Colombia. Why was this base so important? Because they have a unique species of airplanes that fly there. Now, why does water have to do with drugs and sugar? It all has to do with the industry. Coca-Cola requires water. The beer companies require waters. The greatest reservoir is in water. The Amazon has 70% of the area that is controlled by Brazil, because you cannot live without water. Maybe you can live without oil. So when water is controlled, it can reach costs that are unthought of. So the barrel of oil is $58, and of Coca-Cola is $400. So this means that it's 8 times more, and the water is free. They don't even have to do exploration, extraction. If we see a little bit beyond it, the water that is on the surface that goes all the way from Guarani to the Pantanal Brasileiro, our Amazon, it can satisfy 300 million people a day. If we transform this to barrel, this is a great amount of money. And of course, from all of the income is good, but of course it will never compare to the water that you can extract from the Amazon. This is the great potential. And what we normally don't see. What is the plus? What is beyond what our eyes can see that is just extracting mining and wood, oil, natural gas, minerals? Well, maybe, do you think that there might be some transformation? Well, what we want to do is to democratize the information. Because this is, let's not forget that 70% of fresh water is in Brazil, and that is privatized now. Speaking of sugar, if we put it as an additive to these beverages, more than 60 million people are obese, and ninth place in the world of diabetes. So there you do an invisible war, because they're paying for illnesses that will not be cured. However, without sending soldiers. And if we're comparing addictions to cocaine and sugar, it's easier to drop cocaine because of the additives. So there is a neurochemistry addiction to sugar. So this is a non-conventional war. Thank you, Simon. Our time is up, but how interesting is your topic. We hope to have you back soon. Let's go to conclusions immediately.
Bueno, no es circunstancial lo
Well, it's not
descrito,
circumstantial,
ganancias de
everything that has
petróleo
said.
y de proseguir
It's
con
part of
ese régimen de
controlling
explotación
the
colonial
region.
neocolonial. Cuenca amazónica, lo mismo que el canal de Panamá
They
y
want to
esta
take
región,
over the Canal
son
Canal
protocolos
and the
necesarios
Amazon
para
Basin.
Estados Unidos, así
These are
definido
necessary
en
for the
distintos
U.S. This has
documentos
been
a lo largo de la
defined in
historia.
several documents
Colombia
throughout
permite
history.
particularmente
Colombia
la coordinación de dichos
allows that their
desarrollo en operaciones militares
population
encubiertas, sino por tierra,
have
aire
to
y mar,
coexist
o
with
ribereñas.
the
Venezuela
U.S.
está dentro de los
presence
objetivos,
through their
igual que el
military
agua dulce,
bases.
vital y el resto de recursos necesarios para las transnacionales, para esos poderes
Let's not
corporativos.
forget that
La presencia de
transnational
militares
companies
estadounidenses no solo está
have
dispuesta para
the
monitorear
interest of
actividades
having
que
water
tienen que ver
because
con el
the
narcotráfico,
Amazon
que era
Basin
un
has
punto que destacaba Lester, sino
70%
también con la
of the world
producción de armas
reserve.
biológicas listas para activar en caso del más mínimo signo de oposición que hayan a sus planes de expansión. Y como nos decía Simón,
And
allí
as
es un
Simón
espacio
said,
de guerra no convencional,
this is a
pero también
space
de
of
control militar,
non-conventional
como hemos
war.
expuesto a través de distintas pruebas y del análisis con nuestros primeros invitados. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Thank you very
Hasta una
much for
próxima
being with
oportunidad.
us. See you next time.